How you doing, guys? Today we are heading out to the shed because that's where my senior is sleeping. All right, that's closed. Specifically, we're going to be working on the foot pedals, the foot controls for the tractor itself. I got everything laid out here in the shed. We'll get in there. Let's get the doors open here. I'll show you what's going on. Let's get to it. There she is. All right, I have the senior here in the shed because with my truck and the 65 Buick on the jack stands, it was just so tight trying to get my truck into the garage with the three of them abreast in the garage. So just to be safe, took the two RJs out of the shed, put those in the garage, opened up enough space here in the shed for the senior as well as for me to work on it. Today we're going to be doing the foot controls of the tractor. Pretty simple setup. That's the clutch pedal. Then there's two independent pedals for the brakes. As you sit on the tractor, that's the left brake. As you sit on the tractor, that would be the actuator pedal for the right brake. And the way they go on a senior is, take that spacer out real quick. They're like this. So when you're sitting on the tractor, your foot can either engage one brake or the other, or put it right here in the center, and you can do both brakes at the same time. I think that's to help, or theoretically help with turning. So you put on the left brake and turn the wheel. It will do a tighter turn left and a tighter turn right, vice versa. What we have here is a remade pedal bar. You can see my original is right there. I had to cut it in order to get it out of the tractor. Plus, if we take a closer look, you can see how blued that is. You don't understand how much heat it took. I mean, literally, the bar and the end of this thing, the end of the pedal, because it's pinned in by a roll pin, was literally cherry red hot. And then I finally was able to beat the old bar out of the pedal itself. It was that rusted. But everything right now is nice and clean. Everything is set to go. We got a new roll pin, got a couple new cotter pins that are going to be used. In a prior video in the playlist, I show you how I made that bar with the band iron end welded into place for the left brake, as well as putting new bushings in the frame and grease fittings in the frame in preparation to putting this together. Now, there is a spring, a heavy-duty spring that runs from the pedal to these little nuts that are square nuts that are welded to the frame. So basically, the pedal's here, and then there's a spring, a return spring for the pedal. I got to go get those springs, and those springs I do have are replacements because the ones that were on this tractor were unusable. So that, or those springs, may be an issue to finishing this project. But for right now, let's start to lay it out and get things back together. When we start the process to putting this back together, what we need to do is we need to take our foot bar and load it from left to right as you're sitting on the tractor, okay? You load it left to right. The tang for the left brake has to be in the up position. All right, we have to have this up, and it's critical because when we drive the roll pin in, we got to make sure that this thing is actually going to be angled up and towards the rear wheel. I just have it situated a little bit weird right now, but it needs to be in the up position, and we have to put the clutch pedal on first. Okay, slide that onto the bar first. Next goes the actual left brake pedal, which is going to get pinned by the roll pin. So what I'm going to do right now, oh, and the other thing I'm going to do too, when I do that installation, I am going to take the end of the bar and put it on the jack stand, or put the jack stand as close to the roll pin area. So that way when I'm driving the roll pin in, I'm not beating on the bushings themselves. The shock of the hammer driving the pin in will be, supplied to the jack stand and not to the brand new bushings that I put in. All right, so let me go ahead and drive that roll pin, get that thing installed, and we'll go from there. That actually went pretty darn good. I centered the roll pin so that way it's all nice and, there we go, sorry. So it's all nice and straight. We have the bar seems to work. I mean, there's no slop in the pedal to the bar. Next up there is a spacer. This is a 1-inch outer diameter, 3/4 inch inner diameter by 3/4 inch in length. This goes on next, and that spaces this pedal from the bushing. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this all the way over. I'm going to go ahead and get the right foot pedal, slide that onto the end, and then there's 2 cotter pins. There's one that goes at the very end, okay, and then there's one that goes right here, which is on the opposing side of the clutch pedal. So let me go ahead and get all that stuff installed, and we'll take a look, and I'll go get the springs, and we'll take a look at the final setup of the foot controls. It did take a little bit of manipulation to get these springs into place. These springs are just springs I bought at the hardware store, but they're hooked into the nuts real well. They go all the way through the foot pedals, all of them. So let's take a look at the other side. Whoops, sorry. They're hooked in really good. All 3 springs. Let's take a look at this one. Yep, that one's through all the way through. That one probably could have been through a little bit more, but in general, and then when we come over to here, we can, there we go. You can see that's hooked all the way through. So, as you can see, that piece of band iron's in the up position. I just dropped the cotter pin in here. This is what holds the clutch pedal into place. I'll get the grease fitting in a second. Bar comes across. We have the pinned brake foot pedal in. We have the spacer in place. And then when we come over here, we have the final cotter pin. And if you saw the video where I made the bar, I actually nailed it pretty good. I mean, my measurements are pretty much dead on when I drilled the holes. So, and it's nice and solid. Everything is super smooth. You can see that this is working as it should. And this one also. All right, next up, let's get the brake bars. They go from the drums to the foot pedals themselves. There's a little bunch of parts that we need to take a look at. And we're also going to discuss the difference between a 55, which is mine, and a 56. I pulled out the brake bars, and I also pulled out an RJ35 brake kit. Now, I'll explain in 1 second why I pulled out the brake kit for the RJ35. This being a 1955 senior, okay, that early 55 leading into 56, it's kind of a gray area as the year gets longer. I mean, the year gets older of 55 and then early 56. It's a little bit of a gray area. Remember, everything's gray with Wheel Horse at this time. They were building these tractors and the RJ35s in the garage. So whatever they had on hand is what they used. So, but early 55, the senior used a bar to actually actuate the arm on the backing plate. So basically there's a rod, or not, excuse me, a piece of band iron with a peg, and you can see where there's a cotter pin supposed to be in. It runs down along. There's a J hook, as you can see right here. I remade that. My 3 J hooks were totally destroyed in a prior video. I showed you how I did that. 3/8 bar stock, 3/8 16 die, drill a hole for a cotter pin, bend it 90 degrees. Okay, and then this style of big nut right there, there's one in the front and there's one in the back, gives you some adjustment. So as you can see, that's how it's basically set up. This being the opposing side, and I'm just going to really quickly take this apart so I can show you something. Ooh, one-handed. Beautiful. All right. Let me put this here. You can see the difference, which is this one's all bent to crap. They were both bent to crap for some reason, but I heated this up with the torch, straightened it all out. I got some work to do on this one. I'm going to heat it all up. I'll bend it all nice and straight, or fairly straight, because there is a little bit of a kick up needed. We'll get that all done. We'll get that on the other side. Now, the reason for the RJ35 brake kit. If this was a 19... Oh, see, again, it's hard to say. And anybody who says, oh, no, there's a hard stop, they don't know what they're talking about. I apologize to those people, but you don't know what you're talking about, because Wheel Horse was building these things in a garage at the time. These and the RJ35s, whatever was on the shelf is what they used. They didn't have huge amounts of inventory. All of this is well-known information. So you might have a later 55 with the brake cables. You might have an earlier 56 with the brake bars. Okay, so it's all a gray area. But for the most part, in a general sense, 1955 seniors had the bars. 1956 had the cables. Now, the reason why I have this brake kit out is to show you that this is what the brake cable on the senior would have looked like. Very similar, okay? It would have been this like, obviously not this, and none of this, and none of this. You know, that wouldn't be on the senior, but that diameter cable, this sort of sheath that you're seeing right there, that's where, you know, it would attach to the foot pedal, and then that cable would go and connect to the backing plate. Now, I don't know exactly how the cable's hooked up because I don't have a 56. My buddy does have a 56, and he does have the cables for the brakes. So just wanted to show you a little bit of a difference between the 2 years. This one being a 55, we got the bars. So let's go ahead and let me get the torch out. Let me straighten this bar out, and then I'll loosely install everything onto the tractor so we can take a look at it. Quick interjection, just for further verification. This is on the 35 brake kit. The nuts that Wheel Horse used at the time, 3/8/16, 11/16 socket. So between the torch, the press, and the sledge, there they are. I think that came out pretty darn good. This one is the one I was just working on, and it's still pretty darn hot, so I don't really want to accidentally touch it. But as you can see, the angles appear to be on point. All right, let me go ahead and let's get this thing installed. And there we are. The foot controls of a senior are all back installed. The brake bars themselves are nice and straight and fairly mirrored on either side. You can see that this was the worst bar. That's pretty darn good. And this was the other side, which wasn't quite as bad, but looks really good. We have the springs for the left brake in place. Here's the left brake setup. This is how it's supposed to be. Everything looks pretty darn good. I'm real happy with it. Let's just go ahead and scoot on over to the other side real quick. Take a look at that and how it's laid out. I did do some adjustments on the brakes just to get it to get the pedals close, not really dialed in. So I still have to do the click adjustments right to the point where it just, I mean, I don't want them to drag, to be honest with you, but finding that point where the pads are going to be right at the brake drums, so to speak, and then making my adjustments here so my pedals will engage fairly equally between the two of them. Right now I got it fairly loose. I mean, it's, you know, I can roll this thing without much effort, as much effort as you need. It is a little bit heavy, but in general, there it is. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for all your viewership. please like, share, and subscribe, and leave a comment below. All of that really helps me and helps the channel. We'll maybe get my video out to some people that maybe are working on a senior, and they just, you know, before they dive into it, they just want to take a look at some nut like me who's torn one completely apart and putting it back together. All right, guys, thank you very much. Thank you for all your viewership. Thank you to my new subscribers. Thank you to the new people who have watched my channel. If you could please subscribe again, that would be great. And until the next project on the senior, you have a great day.